Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie and in today's video we're going to be doing another episode where I catch up on Freida McFadden's backlist. I have 4 Freida McFadden books left to read, so that is what we are going to be reading in this vlog. I just want to note that I know that she does have one coming out in January. When I am starting to film this, I'm only going to be reading the 4 that I currently have left to read, so I'll be reading her newest release I think probably later in the year. So before I get into the video, please remember to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. I primarily read fantasy, thriller and romance books and I post videos every Sunday. So I have read quite a few Freida McFadden books this year. In fact, I think I started reading her books last October 2024. So I have read them in quite quick succession and I just want to I really enjoy just ticking off an author's backlist, just like, yep, done. So I have done an episode of this before where I focused on 4 of her books. I have also vlogged quite a lot of myself reading her books, so I'll leave those sort of linked throughout. But in this video we're going to be reading The Wife Upstairs, The Ex, Want to Know a Secret and Brain Damage. I think these are some of her oldest ones, like the first books that she published. I don't really hear too much about them, but I'm excited to delve into them. So I have read the first book for this vlog, which is Brain Damage by Freida McFadden, obviously. So in this one we follow our main character Charlie, or Charlotte, or she's Dr. Charlotte McKenna. She is a dermatologist, sort of skin doctor, and she is quite rich. She's in her mid-30s and her mum is pressuring her to settle down, get married, have children, but she doesn't really think that there's a man out there for her. She's quite happy just sort of living her life how she is. She's got friends who have all got kids and she's not really sure if it's for her, to be honest with you. So she is at the clinic one day and there's a few patients that we are introduced to. So the first one is I think he's called Stanley, and he has a groin infection, and we follow Charlotte. She diagnoses him, she prescribes him some medicine, and then he comes back and he's healed, and then he asks her out on a date and she says that no, she doesn't date patients. We have another patient called Kyle Barry, I believe. Well, he's not a patient actually, his wife was the patient, Regina, and Regina had some sort of skin condition and Charlotte helped her with that, and then she also knew that Kyle was quite abusive to Gina, just from things that Gina had said, and she sort of encouraged Gina to seek help and leave her husband, which she then does. She files for divorce from Kyle, and Kyle is obviously not very happy and he blames Charlotte, our main character, for this. And then we have another patient called Clark who comes in because he's got a mole. Charlotte examines the mole, it's all very benign. Now he is a very attractive, good looking man who's about the same age as Charlotte, and she's very attracted to him from the get-go, and he asks her out on a date and she says no, she doesn't date patients. And he says, okay, how long do I have to stop being your patient for before you'll go on a date with me? She says 3 months. 3 months later, Clark comes back and saves her from an altercation with Kyle, and then they go on a date and she ends up marrying this man. So that's kind of before. And then after, Charlotte is brain damaged. She has been shot in the head. We don't know who she's been shot by. Half of her skull is missing. We start where she sort of wakes up after coming around from being shot in the hospital, and then we follow her through her recovery and we find out who shot her, why they shot her, and it's kind of just following Charlotte on this journey. Now, I did enjoy this one. I gave this one a 3-star rating, mainly because I don't think it was actually much of a thriller. From the 3 sort of patients and the characters that I've introduced, I think it's pretty obvious who shot her. The reasonings are, again, kind of obvious. Maybe if you haven't read so many thrillers, or you haven't read so many of Freida McFadden's thrillers, you won't guess this one, but the twist was quite obvious, and again, it wasn't really even a twist, it was quite anticlimactic. Charlotte is kind of in her room at the rehab centre. She can't remember who shot her. She has as well issues with the left side of her eyes and her body. She kind of can't see out of her left eye, and she kind of doesn't even realise that she's got a left arm, so when people are on her left she can't see them, she can't move her left hand and things like that. Everyone thinks that whatever happened was on this side of her face, and she's kind of as a trauma response, she's blocking it out. So like I said, we find out who did shoot her, we follow her throughout her recovery, and the ending of this was quite sweet as well. I think that it shows how important non-marital relationships are, how important relationships are with your friends and things like that. I just think that a lot of Freida McFadden's protagonists are quite irritating and just a bit stupid sometimes. So you have this really clever woman who, she's got investment, she's got a lot of money, she's worked hard to get to where she is, she's a doctor, and then she kind of grabs the first man who shows any interest in her, ignores all the red flags. Yeah, I was just kind of a bit what did you expect to happen? Like, I don't want to give away what happened, but there could be several plots going on with this, but I just think, like, you're just ignoring all these red flags in a man, and it's just kind of like, okay. It was kind of sweet to follow Charlotte, like, throughout her recovery and see her make friends along the way. Like, it was, I had a good time with it. It just wasn't really, for like a thriller, I don't think it was very thrilling. Like I said, the reveal was very anticlimactic, and then we just kind of like carried on with the story. It wasn't really a satisfying thriller, if that makes sense. So this was still good. I still gave it a 3-star rating. I did have fun with it. Like I said, just not, I wouldn't recommend this as a thriller. If you're interested in reading Freida McFadden's backlist, definitely check this one out. Like, it's definitely worth the read. Definitely not bad, but just not like amazing. You know, when we think about like The Housemaid and things like that, this is not anywhere near that level. So you can definitely tell it's one of her earlier work. Either way, I still enjoyed it, and I'll be on to the next Freida McFadden book for this vlog. I have read the next book for this reading vlog, which is The X by Freida McFadden, and I'm really conflicted on what to rate this one, because I think I'll explain my feelings, and then I'll sort of delve into what I think of a rating. So in the very first chapter, the prologue, we have a female character who is unnamed, and she walks into a restaurant and she believes that her long-term boyfriend Joel, it implies that they've been going out for like 10 or so years, that he is finally going to propose to her. So she walks into this restaurant, she's all dolled up, and he is sat at the table and he's in his medical scrubs. He's a doctor, which is like a recurring theme I found in a lot of earlier Freida McFadden books. They're very medical based. She sits down at the table and she's a bit annoyed that he's not dressed up, but you know, she's finally going to get engaged, she thinks, so she'll let it go. And they begin talking, and it turns out actually that he is breaking up with her rather than proposing to her, and she gets really angry, really upset, and they part ways. And then we move to the present timeline. Joel meets a girl called Cassie. Now, she is 10 years younger than him. He's 36 and she's 26. She runs a bookstore that she inherited from her grandparents, and it's really struggling, and he comes into the bookstore to buy books. Now, where the bookstore is, it's near to some sort of college or university that specializes in medical degrees and things like that, and they don't stock medical textbooks, and I will get back to that later on. And she gets really annoyed that people come in and constantly ask for medical textbooks and not like actual novels, and he comes in to buy a copy of Wuthering Heights for his mother, I think, and they hit it off, and he asks her out on a date, and then they begin dating and begin a relationship, and we follow the progression of that relationship. Now, Cassie seems to be hiding something. She seems to have some sort of financial problems, or she's involved with something that she shouldn't be. We don't really know what it is until the very end of the book, and that's kind of like alluded to, but you kind of, I didn't really care, because I think you just didn't really know this girl very well, and then she'll say something and then she's like, oh, but I've got a secret, and I just don't care. And then Joel's friends. So we meet Joel's friends. So we have Lydia and Pete, who are married with a daughter called Violet. Now, they are in a very unhappy marriage. They're very rich, and Lydia is a very successful lawyer. I think Pete's also a surgeon of some kind. Lydia immediately takes a disliking to Cassie because Lydia was best friends with Joel's previous girlfriend Francesca, and Lydia is the reason that Francesca and Joel even met. She put them together, kind of thing. And then we also have another couple called Anna and Con, and Anna is pregnant, and we kind of have like interactions with this group, and we get chapters from the ex who starts to like harass Cassie and like, you know, breaks into her shop and writes horrible things on the doorway and things like that. And then we kind of escalate until we get to the climax of this book. Now, the first point I want to make is in the epilogue of this book, Cassie finally decides to start selling medical textbooks in her bookshop. And why has it taken Joel telling her that this was a good idea for her to actually do it? If you're right by a college that specializes in like medical degrees and you're a bookstore, why are you not stocking the textbooks? Like, yeah, you don't have to have like a whole dedicated aisle to them, but like you should stock them. That would help with the keeping the shop afloat, right? Like, she was just a bit thick. And then I didn't like the way that this story unfolded, really. Like, I was really interested to see what was going to happen, because it did seem a bit typical of like, when you think of what I've just explained to you, you could probably go along with what I was thinking. And then the resolution of this and the twist I didn't like, and it really confused me. And I thought personally it confused me, but I also thought it was quite lazy writing, because essentially it was that you didn't know the full names of some of these characters, or you didn't know the full history. And I think that realistically what went down, I know it's not realistic, it's a book, but I think that these friends, this group of friends that Joel has, would never actually be friends in real life. So the whole thing just kind of, it made it unbelievable, because you just think, well, these people would never actually be friends, so why would they be so involved in each other's lives? I don't know how to explain it without giving away the resolution to this book, but I really don't know what to rate it, because up until the twist I was not really enjoying it, but it was fun. It was very quick to read. For me personally, I literally read this in one sitting. I got my pajamas on, I had my shower, got my pajamas on, got into bed, and I just read this entire book in like 3 hours. So for me it was quite a quick, it was literally it was about 3 hours. So I literally read this book in 3 hours. I just sat down and read it. So it was quite engaging. And that's the thing with Freida McFadden. I think that she really has an engaging writing style, in that you don't want to put the book down because you want to know what's going to happen. But I'm finding with a lot of her earlier works, the payoff just isn't worth it. Now, I've only got 2 of her books left to read, and I know she has a new book that's coming out in January, or has come out in January, and I think I'm going to wait to read that till later in the year. But I'm just finding the payoff just isn't worth it. And I know sometimes when you've written so many books that maybe you're not even running out of ideas, but with a certain number of characters you can only have a certain number of twists, right? But I just think that the way that this went down, it was just quite lazy, and it really annoys me when that happens, because I think the twist in this was that we didn't have the full information, we didn't know the characters very well, and that was the twist. And I just think if we had known some of these characters in proper names, or just had a little bit of backstory to them, then you'd have sussed this out. And I guess that's why we didn't, because otherwise you would have sussed this out from the very beginning. And I just think that like the miscommunication in this as well, or the lack of communication in this, was just again just another way to heighten emotions and make people think things that aren't happening. And yeah, I just didn't love it. So like, but up until then, up until the last like 10%, I did actually quite enjoy this. So I don't know whether to give this a 3-star rating or a 2-star rating. The whole book in general was okay. I certainly wouldn't recommend it if you want like a good thriller book. I certainly would not be recommending this book, but it was okay. It was a fun time and I enjoyed it. I must have enjoyed it to have read it in one sitting, but I think that's Freida McFadden's writing style that has kept me engaged in it. So I'm a bit conflicted on what to rate this one. I think maybe a 2.5. I can't remember what I rated Dead Med, but I think I might have to lower that rating a bit because I really did not like that book. I'm glad I read this one and it was okay. It was just okay. I wouldn't recommend it. I definitely think her newer stuff is a lot more interesting. I think because I've gone backwards, I'm now like getting to her first few books. I don't know even what her first published book was actually. I think it might have been Dead Med. I'm getting to like the dregs, if that makes sense. And I think her newer stuff is better just because there's more diversity in the setting and the characters. I think a lot of her earlier stuff is very medical related, which makes sense because she is like a qualified doctor, isn't she, or whatever she is. Yeah, I think a 2-star, 2.5 for this. I think a 2.5 for this one. I think yeah, it's just like half a rating. You know, it was okay. I enjoyed the ride up until the end, but yeah, it just got a bit frustrating really. And I think that for me, I wouldn't have tolerated a lot of what happened between Cassie and Joel's friends, especially with one friend in particular. I think that Joel should have like stepped in and had words, because she was just quite frankly quite rude to Cassie and nasty. And this is what I don't understand, is like, why would you be friends with someone like that? Because she was even nasty to Joel. So I'm just kind of like, I don't really understand this friendship. That's what I mean by I don't think these people would actually be friends in real life. And I mean that about both of the other couples, Con and Anna, and Lydia and Pete. I think they were friends with Lydia because obviously Pete was Joel's friend from medical school and Lydia is now Pete's wife. But I just think, yeah, these people just wouldn't be friends, and then that makes the whole story for me fall apart. So yeah, a 2.5 I think for this one. Not her best, definitely not her best, but only 2 left to go now to get through her backlist, so I will get back to you when I have read another one of her books. So I have now read the next Freida McFadden book for this vlog, which is Want to Know a Secret. We follow April, who is a YouTube sensation. She does like baking videos on YouTube. I say sensation. April says that she's a sensation. Everyone else seems to think that she doesn't do very well on YouTube. She is married to Elliot, her husband, who is a hotshot lawyer, and they have a son together called Bobby, and they get new neighbours. And the new neighbour, the wife is called Maria, and I can't remember what the husband's called, and they have a son, I think his name was Owen. Bobby and Owen become fast friends and they sort of do play dates together and things like that. And April also has a friend called Julie who lives on the other side of April, and Julie is supposedly her best friend. So in this book we follow April, and I don't really know how to explain this one, woman, but essentially she starts to receive text messages sort of saying like, want to know a secret, your son isn't in the garden where you think he is. So she goes outside and her son is in the neighbour's garden, and things start to happen. She seems to think that someone's out to get her. So for example, she thinks that one of the little boys that Bobby plays with pushed another child, and Bobby gets blamed for it. At a like village fair, she's supposed to be doing all this baking, and somebody posts on Facebook pretending to be her, saying that she's got like a stomach bug and no one wants to buy all her stuff and things like that. And her husband is quite obviously having an affair, and he's had an affair before. Basically, April's life kind of falls apart, and then we find out who essentially has been sending her these text messages and who is kind of out to get her in a way. And I gave this one a 3-star. It was just kind of, I think, an average Freida McFadden thriller in like her early works. I feel like this vlog is just gonna be full of 3-star reads. I don't know, there wasn't really all too many twists. The twists that we did get, I did kind of enjoy. I do think it was pretty obvious like what was going on in April's life and how she was kind of like lying to her audience, how she sort of lies in this YouTube show. She's kind of lying to us in the same way, and just how she's really an unreliable narrator. And I think this trope, I've just read too much of it, and I just kind of could see it coming a mile off. And I think, you know, she's being threatened with certain things, and then she'll say like, you know, she hates her husband because her husband's had an affair before, and then like she had an affair with someone but downplays it, so doesn't seem as bad, and like how she's a good person for forgiving her husband, and like, you know, she's a good person for welcoming the new neighbour. And I don't know, it was just kind of and then the twist at the end was quite good as well. Like, I definitely didn't see that one come in, but yeah, it was just kind of good. It was like, I liked it. I wouldn't necessarily like recommend it as a thriller book to read, but I think if you do enjoy Freida McFadden, you will enjoy this. It was just kind of like, okay, really, nothing really too special. To be honest with you, I finished it a couple of days ago, and I actually had to like remind myself of the character names. It was just kind of like, I enjoyed it in the moment, but it's actually just pretty forgettable for me. It just, I don't know, I feel like I've read this book so many times over and over again. It was just kind of like, doesn't really stay in the memory bank. So that is Want to Know a Secret, really. I can't really say too much more about it without spoiling anything. But yeah, 3 stars, so not too bad. It was quick, it was fast paced, it was interesting, but I do think there just wasn't enough gritty, meaty stuff in it to really keep me like engaged. Like, I sort of put this down, didn't read it for a few days, and I just didn't really like find myself motivated to pick it back up, which is unusual with me for a thriller book. I usually pick them up when I'm, you know, wanting something quick and engaging to keep me interested. So yeah, it was just kind of okay, really. So that's all I kind of have to say on this one, really. The characters were all pretty forgettable, none of them really stood out. Storyline was pretty average, and the reveals were pretty average as well. So that's kind of all I have to say about this one, really. So on to the last book for this reading vlog, which is The Wife Upstairs. So I have now read the final book for this reading vlog, which is The Wife Upstairs by Freida McFadden. So in this one, we follow our main character Sylvie, who gets a job working for a married couple. The couple consists of Adam and Victoria had an accident, I think about a year prior to the start of the book. She fell down the stairs and she has some injuries, and she can't really take care of herself anymore. So she has a nurse that looks after her, and basically Sylvie's job would be to just kind of keep her company, feed her meals, and just do things that after the nurse has gone in the morning, Sylvie just kind of keeps her company and things like that. So their house is 3 hours away from New York, from what I remember. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's very like not abandoned, but it's very isolated, and Sylvie takes the job because she can live there as well. And essentially, as she gets to know Victoria and Adam, she starts to think maybe things aren't quite as they seem with this couple, and she kind of doesn't know who essentially is the bad guy here. Now, I gave this one a 4-star rating. It's essentially, if you've read Verity by Colleen Hoover, this book is essentially Verity, which is written by Freida McFadden. So I did really enjoy this one. I love the suspense of it, but I did kind of guess what was going to happen. I think because I'd already read Verity, and I've kind of read this, you know, when Verity blew up, everyone was loving it, and then a lot of authors kind of tried to recreate it off their own back. It's obviously Freida McFadden's version of that, and I just kind of could guess what was happening because I could pick up on the clues and work out what was going on. And I think for me, it was very obvious that it was like Verity 2.0 essentially. So I did like this one and gave it a 4-star. Maybe it's more of a 3-star, I don't know, but like I did really enjoy it. It's just I guessed what was going to happen. I thought that the characters were all really interesting, and there was little twists at the end that I kind of didn't really see coming as well, so that did have that going for it as well. And I just think this was definitely one of Freida's better earlier works in my opinion, and I think it was just fun. It was a fun time. It was quick to read. It kept me engaged. Like, yeah, I kind of guessed what was going to happen, but I still had a fun time with it. And I think if I hadn't had already read Verity and so many books like it, I think this would have really shocked me. Like it did Verity. The first time I read Verity completely shocked me. So I think maybe if I hadn't already read that and hadn't read quite a few books like it, I would have been more shocked, and therefore maybe it would have had a 5-star rating. I don't know. But it was fun, it was quick, it was easy to read, like with any Freida McFadden book, and the characters were pretty interesting as well. Like we had Adam, who the husband, who's an author. So Sylvie reads Victoria's diary, and that's how she kind of learns about Victoria's like point of view, I guess. And it was kind of interesting us trying to picture if Adam was actually like this as well, and what was going on with all the side characters, because they have this massive house, they have a cook, they have a cleaner, they have a gardener, and just kind of like what was going on with everyone, because you didn't really know who you could trust in this one. So it was a really fun time. I did really enjoy it. So a 4-star rating for this one, and that is me caught up on Freida McFadden's backlist, apart from her newest release, which I think came out at the end of January, so I haven't read that one yet. That's not really a backlist, it's a brand new release. So that is it for me catching up on Freida McFadden's backlist. I'm glad that I've like read all her books now, so I can really see what she's like as an author. And I think if you want like quick popcorn thrillers, that's exactly what you're going to get with Freida McFadden, and like all of them are on Kindle Unlimited. I think the only one I had to pay for was The Wife Upstairs. It's not on Kindle Unlimited for some reason, but I think it's only like 99p. So yeah, really good author, and I'm glad I've caught up on her backlist. So that is going to be it for today's video. Please comment down below if you've read any Freida McFadden books. What did you guys think of them? Please remember to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.